The Diamondbacks bounce back against the Giants, but if they don't take the series, the sellers conversation is officially on the table.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Diamondbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, George Lund, and the Diamondbacks are coming off a very rough weekend after being swept by the Rays. Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly, two more disappointing starts in what's been an underwhelming season for the both of them. After bringing them back in the offseason, Merrill Kelly didn't have a lot of answers for what he needs to fix after the game, and it's really tough, 37 years old, and then Zac Gallen's in the middle of this period where he was supposed to be in a contract year where maybe he makes up for some things and gets himself a big contract with a big year in the offseason, but just hasn't been able to do that. And Kelly and Gallen have combined and not been able to keep the Diamondbacks in games, and combine that with the runners in scoring position issue. It was just a rough weekend overall. Of course, they played well against the Cardinals, but took two more steps back after that series against the Rays. But now the Diamondbacks get a huge opportunity back at home against the Giants, who they came into this game 6-0 against on the season. The Giants are one of the few teams that are playing worse baseball than the Diamondbacks are this season and over the course of this month. It's been a roller coaster for them. Tony Vitello's first year, Willie Adames hasn't been all what he's supposed to be. Matt Chapman had a really slow start. A lot of their pitchers, Logan Webb, had a really slow start to the season. They've just had a lot of underperformers, and then it's been the whole media debacle recently with some of the hat choices, and it's just been complete chaos for the Giants, and you have to feel for them. But it was a great opportunity for the Diamondbacks to get back to square one, play some good baseball, fix some of the issues that they've had over the course of the last month, and they really did that. They took the game 5-4. It was a nice win. Paul Sewald made the game a lot closer than it had to be in the ninth inning, giving up 2 runs. He gave up 3 runs in the Cardinals series when he was trying to close what was a pretty big lead there. That's a story for a different time. Does Paul Sewald still deserve to be the closer? He is a 4.5 ERA now. It's kind of the early season honeymoon of bringing back Paul Sewald, and he's reinvented himself. It's kind of worn off now, and he's gotten really close to blowing a few saves here recently. But again, like I mentioned, a really big chance for the Diamondbacks to get back to square one. They're not going to see Logan Webb or Robbie Ray in this series, so two of their kind of saving graces for the season you're not going to be able to see. So you're seeing the Tyler Mahle, the Adrian Hausers, who haven't been that great for the Giants this season. But like I mentioned before, the Diamondbacks over the last 30 games have been the worst team in baseball with runners in scoring position. Now, what do the Diamondbacks need to improve upon? Just that. They've been able to manufacture runners on base, get runners on third, second, first, whatever it is. Runners in scoring position has not been an issue, especially when Ketel Marte, Corbin Burnes, Gabriel Moreno, a lot of their hitters at the top of the lineup consistently get on base. It hasn't been, at this point in the year, an issue with their star power. It's really been the middle of the order that's let them down. Geraldo Perdomo in particular. He's around a 500 OPS with runners in scoring position this year after about a 900 OPS last season. So that's been a huge drop-off. And of course, playing the Giants, everything went well for the Diamondbacks today. Geraldo Perdomo entered the day with a 579 OPS with runners in scoring position, and he had a 3 RBI double in the 5th inning after the Giants took out their starter Tyler Mahle and brought in Sam Hentges. And he had an 3 RBI double down the left field line and gave the Diamondbacks separation when they needed it the most. So that was a big hit on the day. Ketel Marte kept it going. He homered in the first inning, homers in 3 straight games. And then Nolan Arenado, his first home run since June 1st on a 2-hit day, probably his best offensive day in over a month. It's been that bad for him recently. Hopefully that's kind of a spark to get him going, and they really, really need him. I've talked about in the past how some of their offensive issues in the middle of the order really stem from a lot of their veterans. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Nolan Arenado, Pavin Smith, a lot of guys that you can rely upon throughout the course of a year to have those cold stretches, but they can get themselves out of it because they've been there, done that. But right now, it feels like those are 3 guys that really haven't been able to get themselves out of the rut that they're in currently. Obviously, Nolan Arenado is getting up there in age, but you still expect him to be at least league average offensive player, hopefully for the rest of the season after this kind of tough stretch that he's had. But overall, a good offensive day. Not great, But when Ketel Marte gets it going, Perdomo, Arenado, the guys that you want to see continue to succeed, that's always a good thing. And then the runners in scoring position in particular, that was a big spot for them to come up with a big hit. And I felt really good about that in particular. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, he was fantastic, and he continues to be fantastic when they really they need length, they need consistency, and they need quality out of their starting pitchers right now. And Eduardo Rodriguez continues to give that to the Diamondbacks. 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 0 walks, 1 strikeout. It was kind of a weird day. There was a lot of hard contact. I think Casey Schmidt had 300 miles per hour outs on the day. Kind of a tough day for him. Rafael Devers had 2 deep flyouts to about the warning track. So a lot of hard contact, and it was a really pitch to contact day for Rodriguez in particular. But I thought he was great. The changeup got a lot of chase, over a 50% chase rate. He was really hitting it on those outside left corners. And the fastball, he threw it a 49% of the time, which is a season high, 92.1 mile per hour average exit velocity, which is not so great, but he relied upon his defense, and I felt like that was a big part of the day. Really trusting in his guys. Again, 0 walks, so the command was really good. And like I said, the changeup was really good. He threw 25 changeups, 27%, 38% whiff rate, 6 whiffs on 16 swings, and only 1 hit allowed, and 78.2 mile per hour average exit velocity. So the fastball got some loud contact, but the changeup was really the opposite of that. Again, contact profile, it worked. 1 strikeout, 25 balls in play, 12 hard hit balls, 90.6 mile per hour average exit velocity. Normally that's really dangerous, but like I said, 0 walks, never allowed innings to spiral, and kept traffic off bases and damage limited. I think he's top 3 in baseball right now in left on base percentage among qualified pitchers. So that's been the thing for Eduardo Rodriguez all year long, is really limiting how far base runners advance, and he's been good in those clutch situations, and that's why he has a 2.21 ERA, which is 5th among qualified starters. It's been kind of a crazy year. I almost feel like I'm a little bit of a stat nerd in that I look at the underlying numbers of his expected ERA is around 5, and you see a day like today where he has all this hard contact, and you're thinking, well, it's got to blow up on him eventually. He can't live on 1 strikeout and all these hard hit balls all over the place that go for line outs, deep flyouts. But maybe this just is Eduardo Rodriguez, and there's nothing for me to say that, how am I to say a 2.21 ERA is luck? You know what I mean? It gets to a point where maybe this is just him. He knows how to get his line outs, get his hard ground outs, and he knows when to dot corners when he really needs to. But the command's been great all year, and I think that's been a big step up in how he's deceptive, and he's getting chase outside the zone, and he knows to really pinpoint those corners. And the fastball's been great for him all year. So another great start from Eduardo Rodriguez. He continues to be exactly what the Diamondbacks need in these big moments. Now it's just, can they get these kind of starts from some of the other pitchers? Can Gallen and Kelly take a step in the right direction? I mean, even if just one of those guys were to figure it out a little bit, that would be great for the Diamondbacks right about now. We'll talk about some injury updates a little later in the show. I do want to talk about Michael Soroka, Corbin Burnes, and how some of those guys are progressing. Torrey talked about it before the game, James McCann, among some others. We'll talk a little bit about when those guys could be coming back, if there's progress being made. Soroka seems like he's on his way, although not too close, but hopefully we'll see him maybe a little bit after the All-Star break, is what Torrey said. I want to go to break. Just wanted to recap the game a little bit. After the break, we'll talk about if the Diamondbacks should sell despite the win today. The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now, FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet in a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. That's what I love about these tournaments. You can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. Now, I had this topic ready to talk about whether the Diamondbacks won against the Giants or they lost to the Giants. I think it's an indifferent point because the Giants have been one of the worst teams in baseball this year, and the Diamondbacks have excelled against teams who are among some of the worst in baseball and really struggled against teams above 500 this year. So you felt like no matter what, it was going to be a chance to get back on track a little bit. And I think this point goes without saying, doesn't really matter because it really does matter how they play against teams above 500. And that's been a struggle so far this year. And their series against the Cardinals and the Rays didn't exactly prove to me that anything's changing in that regard. So my point being is we've talked a lot about recently, should the Diamondbacks buy? What should they be buying? What should they be looking for at the trade deadline? But I think it's starting to get to the point with how many teams are still in contention for the NL wildcard spot. There's 4 or 5 teams still above the Diamondbacks right now trying to get in that wildcard spot, and then there's 3 teams holding a wildcard spot. The Diamondbacks are closer to the bottom of the National League than they are the top. And that's the top of the wild card, not just the top in general. So I think there still is a point to be made. Should the Diamondbacks be selling at the trade deadline? Now I know, panic. No, I don't want to get rid of Ketel Marte. No, I don't want to get rid of Eduardo Rodriguez. Yes, I get that. I don't think this is a full teardown. I don't think there should be a fire sale. I don't think the Diamondbacks are at the point where they need to tear down this core of Marte, Perdomo, Carroll. I don't think that's the thing. I think it's similar to last year where you can sell off some of your expiring pieces and get some trade in return, build for next year. Now, that's not me saying let's give up on the team yet, but I think at this point in the year, there's just too many injuries for this team to find any consistency. Kelly, Gallen, they have too many guys right now who've just proven to be big disappointments. Carlos Santana came into the year as the first baseman. They had too many what-ifs on this team, and a lot of the what-ifs have not proven to be successful. Even Arenado, he had a 2-hit game today, but it really does feel like he's slowing down, and he's not going to be that big third base replacement that they thought he was going to be at the beginning of the year when he started off fresh. And a lot of the moves that they made, it just feels like in the short term, they haven't worked out for maybe the run that they thought they were going to be able to make this year. And there's been a lot of disappointment on this team. Perdomo definitely hasn't followed up the year that he had last year. This year, Marte got off to a slow start, although he's heating up at this point. But I think there is room to say that there's some pieces to be moved at the deadline. And the way that I look at it is this isn't necessarily giving up on the season, but rather, capitalizing on some of the nicer moves that they have made and some of the guys on expiring contracts that I think really don't fit in their future anyways. And, you talk about relief pitching depth. You talk about starter depth. Once they get everybody back from injuries, they wouldn't really need a lot of these guys if they are contending at the end of the year anyways. You have AJ Puck. You have Justin Martinez. You have Corbin Burnes. You have Ryan Nelson. You have all these guys that you're going to get back anyways. And if the Diamondbacks want to contend, they're going to need those guys back. And they're going to have to put themselves in playoff contention by that point anyways. And if they're not, well, you would have been mad that you didn't get some value for these guys. The guys that I sort of look at right now, Michael Soroka, obviously having one of the best years of his big league career, the best WAR he's had since 2019, his breakout year with the Braves. Of course, he's had some incredibly bad injury luck, tearing his Achilles tendon twice throughout his career, and then now another injury with the Diamondbacks when it really felt like he was finding his own, reinventing himself as more of a cutter, sidearm pitcher. His arm angle is as low as it's ever been throughout his career. He's done a great job reinventing himself, but he does have a mutual contract going into next season, and it's not for a ton of money, and I like to imagine he'd be willing to test free agency, and I think someone's going to spend or dish out too much money for the Diamondbacks to be able to re-sign him in the offseason, and I don't think he's going to take that mutual deal. So why not get some value for him now? Now, I understand he's still injured, and we'll talk a little bit about what that injury is and how he's progressing a little later in the show. But for now, I think there's some room to say that, he's not Eugenio Suarez where he was at last season where the Diamondbacks have this big bidding feud for him. But I think there's something to be said that a team could definitely use a starting pitcher like Michael Soroka right now. There's still the injury concern, but he has been that good this year. And you don't want to lose him in the offseason and not get any value for him. If the Diamondbacks do truly feel like they're still contenders by the trade deadline and they could use him, well, that's fair. But the way it's trending, I just don't believe that to be so. Nolan Arenado, another guy, savvy veteran, been around the block, been around the league for a long time. He's still a great defender, even at his age. Now, he did have a bad month of June, but again, hopefully a step in the right direction today. 2 hits and a home run. I think a lot of teams could use him over at third base, a valuable defensive third baseman, been around the block, like I mentioned, veteran, postseason experience, and hopefully the bat starts to heat up where that could be of value. Now he's making $6 million this year, $5 million next year, so he's on a bit of a contract, but he's not making a ton of money, especially for the caliber of player he used to be. Now you're hoping he's still that going forward. And I wrote down Paul Sewald, and I don't know how much I believe there's much trade value for him after today. A 4.5 ERA, but he is on a 1-year deal, and I don't know, he could bring some value back, and the Diamondbacks definitely shouldn't be looking at him as a part of their future. Hopefully, once they get Puck and Martinez back, he's not even in the closer role. Jonathan Loaizaga, another guy who's been phenomenal for them this year, on a 1-year deal. And everybody needs relievers, especially when you're making a playoff push. You always need depth. Ryan Thompson, a similar player where he's a sidearmer. He's going to give you something different. He's been great, and he's been a long-time Diamondback, so it would be sad to see him go. But again, those are just three of the relievers that stand out to me that could bring something in return, and guys that, you're not tearing up the core of Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, Geraldo Perdomo, Gabriel Moreno, and all this young pitching. I think the core doesn't have to change. It is feeling like at this point in the year that this might be a throwaway year. And as frustrating as that is, that's why I think there's moves to be made to bring back Ryan Waldschmidt, let Tommy Troy grow, let Lou James Groover grow, let some of these young guys grow so they can contend next year. They can get rid of all these contracts of these guys that are clogging up the lineup, like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Pavin Smith, and find some new offense, a new spark. And they can do that in the offseason while also letting their young guys grow. But Perdomo, Marte, Carroll, Burnes when he comes back, these guys are all on big lucrative contracts. So the core of the team is still together. I just think you may as well capitalize now while they're waiting for all these guys to come back for injury and maybe see what you have then. And I still think there is room to find maybe a left-handed bat like how they had Max Kepler, or a cheap innings eater starter. Maybe spice things up a little bit, just enough depth in case this team catches fire once players return from injury. But I'd be very hesitant to move any of their top prospects. I saw somebody post on Twitter today within the Diamondbacks' top 10 prospects who would be untouchable. For me, all of them should be untouchable. Now, I know the Diamondbacks won't be really that big of buyers anyways, to where they give away any of their top 10 prospects. But right now, I think everybody in their top 10 should be untouchable unless you can get a guy pre-arb that, saves you some money, because that's what the Diamondbacks need to do right now, is save money. That would be a fit on this team going forward for years to come. But I'd be really hesitant to give away their future right now, because they gosh darn it, they really need their future. You got to fill a spot at first base. You got to fill multiple spots in the outfield, especially Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is going to be gone next season. You're still preparing eventually to have a spot you need at third base. Gabriel Moreno, although he's great, he's not on contract for that much longer. Marte's getting up there in age, so you want to have a guy ready there just to fill in. Maybe, in the future when Marte starts to slow down. So there's going to be some spots where they need guys going forward. Obviously, you're always going to need relievers. You're always going to need the rotation. So this team isn't getting any younger. So I'd like to see them keep their young core as of right now. I'd be very hesitant to move any of their top prospects. So I want to go to break. We'll talk a little bit about some injury updates. Torrey, like I mentioned earlier, gave some updates this morning before the game. Give you some updates on those, see where they're at in their recovery. So like I mentioned earlier, Michael Soroka was having the best season he's had since 2019 before his injury. 3.07 ERA, 2.1 WAR, 82 innings pitched. That's about 7 innings less than last season, which was his previous season high since 2019. It's been really frustrating for Michael Soroka. 2 Achilles tendons tear, like I mentioned earlier, some other minor injuries along the way. Such an unfortunate bit of string of injuries for a pitcher that's been so successful, especially at the beginning of his career, and such a talented pitcher. We've seen that in Arizona this year, how he's reinvented himself, and it's been great to see. Definitely one of the stories of the Diamondbacks season. But on June 20th, he was placed on the IL with a left glute strain. It was a tough day for the Diamondbacks. They lost Lawler in that day, and they lost Ryan Nelson in the morning for more of an extended period of time. But the good news, according to Torey Lovello and Michael Soroka the day of, is the injury is largely asymptomatic, no follow-up imaging required before throwing, and expected to begin bullpen progression soon. And he could realistically return shortly after the All-Star break if everything stays on schedule. Now, that's not only good for the Diamondbacks' hopes before the trade deadline and kind of seeing where they're at and gauging the talent of the team and where they may be able to go, but it's also good for them if, like I said, they decide to be sellers at the trade deadline, because Michael Soroka feels like that one piece that could get them a good haul at the deadline, replace more of their prospects going forward, or just get some value for him if they lose him in the offseason, which would be very frustrating. But to me, he's their big trade chip, but also could help them in the short term because they're looking for starting pitching right now. Eduardo Rodriguez has been really the only consistent arm that's been able to give them that. James McCann, obviously, he's been on the IL since May 19th with a quad injury. It's been a long time since we've seen James McCann. We've had to have Aramis Garcia and Adrian Del Castillo kind of hold it down back there at the backup catcher position. And alongside that, we'll talk about Gabriel Moreno. He's been dealing with a bit of a hamstring issue. So McCann in the backup catcher position would be a nice return. The latest, according to Torey Lovell, an MRI showed significant healing, and he begins a rehab assignment July 2nd in the Arizona Complex League. But all at the same time, while he would be a positive addition to get back in the locker room and have a more of a consistent guy back there, I'm not expecting a huge impact. Looking at his statistics early on in the season, he owns the club's worst defensive run saves among catchers, and pitchers have the second highest ERA with him behind the plate. That's above 5, where Gabriel Moreno's had a 3.7 ERA behind the plate. And we'll talk about Gabriel Moreno in a second, but McCann's having one of the more poor defensive seasons that he's had in a few years. He's never been the best defensive catcher behind the plate. Sometimes his offenses shine through, and that's been a big positive. And pitchers say a lot of good things about him, so not to beat on him too much, but definitely not one of those additions, especially back to the lineup, that I'm overly excited about, but still some news in that. And then Gabriel Moreno, he's been in the DH spot a lot recently, which has left a few guys out. He's still managing a hamstring issue. Lovella said the team has intentionally told him to not run at 100% so he can stay in the lineup. Of course, he made a really nice diving catch when he was behind the plate over in foul territory, so clearly he's still got some spring in him, but restrictions could be lifted soon. And like I said, the positive, he's been Arizona's second best defender besides Geraldo Perdomo, and pitchers own a 3.7 ERA with Moreno catching, which is the best mark on the team by a large margin. He's been able to cut down runners stealing a good amount. He's great framing behind the plate. He blocks balls, and he seems to have a good relationship with every pitcher. So, of course, to have him back there consistently, that's a really nice thing going forward. And then the last person, Corbin Burnes. He hasn't pitched since June 1st, 2025. As it sits, I'm not ready to say that that's a bust of a contract, but it really was frustrating for him to have Tommy John and then that early into his Diamondbacks career and then have another setback to an injury that he said he's never had before in his entire life. That's always frustrating to hear because, of course, that would happen to the Diamondbacks. And we may not even see him by the end of the year. He's expected to be reevaluated during the first or second week of July. If imaging looks good, he can begin throwing progression, still faces a lengthy ramp up before returning, and it's too early to project a return date. Now, a lot of the somewhat projected return dates have been around September, maybe late September, if he even pitches this year. It's been really frustrating because when he was healthy, he was great as a Diamondback, but of course, he's a pitcher where he's not getting any younger and he's closing in on his mid-30s. So hopefully the Diamondbacks get him by the end of the year. But I feel like if they get to a point where they're directly out of a playoff contention and they're not even close to a wild card spot, I wouldn't want to see him pitch this year. Give a lot of the younger guys some time at the major league level, have them make some starts, see what they have with some of the Mitch Bratts and the Jose Cabreras. I rather that than have another setback for Corbin Burnes and he can't pitch or he's not healthy by spring training. That would be really unfortunate. But those are some of the injury updates, of course. Nothing crazy. Hopefully Michael Soroka is making some good progression. That would be something that I would feel really positively about. But I wanted to transition a little bit, talk about some of the prospects for the Diamondbacks. Now, MLB Pipeline had a new top 100 prospects put out this morning, and 2 Diamondbacks were featured in the top 100. Ryan Walshmit, he stays in the number 30 position. Of course, Ryan Walshmit has come up between AAA, and he was in the major leagues for a little bit, and he started hot when he came up for the Diamondbacks. Really exciting. Their number 1 overall prospect, hitting 353 with a 411 on base percentage and a 471 slug through his first 57 plate appearances. He really sparked the Diamondbacks offense when they were in a position where they really needed him to. Of course, losing Lawler and looking for some consistency in the outfield with Gurriel still out. But then the league adjusted. 180 batting average, 231 on base percentage, and a 262 slug over his next 65 plate appearances. Still had some interesting splits. The spin was kind of a big factor in figuring out right-handed pitching at the major league level. He had an 889 OPS versus left-handed pitching, but only a 594 OPS versus right-handed pitching in 34 strikeouts against righties. In 83 plate appearances against righties, he struggled 34 times. So it just really felt like Ryan Walshmit was struggling with major league spin and kind of figuring out off speed. He was really struggling against, high end heaters and outside sliders. And it felt like the major league pitching definitely caught up to him. So a chance to go down to AAA and figure out what he needs to succeed with down at that level. Feels like he's been a little better down at AAA this year. 301 average, 938 OPS. He has an 862 OPS in June. So, not the hot start that he got off to in AAA, but it felt due that you're going to struggle at the major league level and have to go down in AAA and figure a few things out. You never know. It could just be him tweaking a few things and going through those adjustments. And feels like he's starting to heat up. 3 homers in his last 20 games. He's playing center field, obviously, early on in his minor league career. Drew Jones was clogging up that center field spot, but he kind of got out of it, and now he's playing more center field. And, of course, the Diamondbacks had a little trial run with Jordan Lawler in center field, but now Jordan Lawler's injured, so definitely an opportunity opening up at the major league level, especially if Lourdes Gurriel decides to consistently not be able to hit. Feels like maybe eventually they get rid of him, DFA him, whatever the case is, and move on from him. And Ryan Walshmit fits perfectly, be able to play a little more center field. Tommy Troy's played a lot of center field right now. Also a case where if Tommy Troy finally hits a wall, that Ryan Walshmit could come up for him. Of course, Tommy Troy didn't go down when Walshmit went down. They showed confidence in Troy, and Troy's been really good as of recently. Some of the MLB Pipeline grades have him hit 55, power 55, run 55. He's an overall 55 grade prospect, pretty well balanced all around. That's kind of the story on Ryan Walshmit, is he can be a 5-tool player, and that's hopefully what the Diamondbacks expect to get out of him. Feels like he could be a day 1 starter going into next season. And then Kason Cunningham was named the Diamondbacks number 74 overall prospect. He's a little different from Ryan Walshmit. Ryan Walshmit's 3 years older. He's only 20 years old. He was a 2025 first-round pick. He's currently in high A. At low A this season, he had a 381 average, 977 OPS. In high A, he struggled a little bit, 241 average, 665 OPS, but in his last 10 games, he has a 386 average. MLB Pipeline grades have him at a 60 hit, 60 run. Definitely more of a contact guy. The power has come and go. That a lot of the projections don't really expect him to be a power bat at the major league level, but some of the scouting notes, when you look at him, one of the best pure high school hitters in the 2025 class coming out of that draft class. And some evaluators viewed him as a future bat for second baseman. He's playing shortstop right now, and from what I understand, the Diamondbacks expect him to be a shortstop going forward, but definitely a little bit of a smaller guy, so some concern about what he could be going forward. But right now, feels like he's progressing nice. So two Diamondbacks in the top 100. Felt like a few guys could have cracked the top 100, but for now, 2 prospects to watch for going forward. In the future, I definitely want to talk about the MLB draft coming up, not till July 11th, so a little bit of time. So we'll talk a little bit about the MLB draft. I'll do a full episode on what potentially the Diamondbacks could be looking for at pick 15 and pick 31. They, of course, have a competitive balance in round A, which is nice for them. Get 2 kind of first-round picks. So we'll talk a little bit about that going forward, some of the projections that they could have. In the next episode, I definitely do want to talk about Torey Lovell. Talked a little bit about the veterans. He was asked on reduced playing time for some of the struggling veterans. We'll talk about that response. I want to talk about Merrill Kelly. He had a lot of thoughts about his most recent outing. Is Merrill Kelly going to be able to figure it out? How is he going to be able to turn things around? And of course, Brandon Pfaadt is making his start today. So we'll talk a little bit about that outing, the Giants series altogether. If a series win could change where they go at the trade deadline, we'll talk a lot about that in the next episode. But thank you guys again for tuning into Locked On Diamondbacks. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast to get all the latest episodes. Follow me at GLN Media on X. I post content on there all the time, especially a lot of Diamondbacks content, pitching breakdowns, whatever you need. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Diamondbacks ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedondiamondbacks.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel on audio for your second listen. Go check out the Locked On MLB. Thank you guys again.